Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
You tweeted about North Korea yesterday. Do you believe that they violated UN resolutions with the short-range missile launch? And does it give you pause at all to be appearing to side with a brutal dictator instead of with a fellow American, the former Vice President Joe Biden?
Well, Kim Jong-un made a statement that Joe Biden is a low IQ individual. He probably is, based on his record. I think I agree with him on that.
Oh, my God.
At the same time, my people think it could have been a violation, as you know. I view it differently. I view it as a man, perhaps he wants to get attention, and perhaps not. Who knows? It doesn't matter. All I know is that there have been no nuclear tests. There have been no ballistic missiles going out. There have been no long-range missiles going out. And I think that someday we'll have a deal.
But in terms of criticism that you're sort of supporting a dictator instead of an American vice president?
Well, when I look at what's been done by our vice president and the president, when I look at the horrible Iran deal that they made, look what happened since I terminated the Iran deal. Look what has happened to Iran. Iran, when I first came into office, was a terror. They were fighting in many locations all over the Middle East. They were behind every single major attack, whether it was Syria, whether it was Yemen, whether it was individual smaller areas, whether it was taking away oil from people. They were involved with everything. Now they're pulling back because they've got serious economic problems. We have massive, as you know, massive sanctions and other things. I mean, we just said the other day, steel, copper, different elements of what they used to sell. The oil is essentially dried up. And I'm not looking to hurt Iran at all. I'm looking to have Iran say, no nuclear weapons. We have enough problems in this world right now with nuclear weapons. No nuclear weapons for Iran.
That's what the Iran deal was about. Hello, everybody. Hello. No nuclear weapons for Iran. That's what the Iran deal was about. Hi, I apologize. I have jungle hair. I can't even explain to you, like, when I'm in the jungle, how people, what are you doing with your hair? What are you doing with your hair? Oh, I see you're wearing a hat. So that's for the frizzies. It's jungle hair. You know that rescued hiker that talked about surviving 17 days in the forest? Yeah, me too. And everything was copacetic. Everything was cool. We saw monkeys. And their babies. We saw a giant crocodile, that survived everything, including bad presidents. We saw him. That thing was massive. He was a freaking monster, and it's just like either you could look at that and say, see, now that's what it takes to survive everything. You need armor. You need armor of steel is what you need to survive it all. Or you could look at it and go, oh, got to be a super predator. It just depends on which side of the aisle you're on. But there is no politics in the jungle. There's only survival is what it is. And then everything was fine. We had a really nice time. Of course, I didn't stay in the jungle. I was in the jungle for like a day or two. And then, you go back to the house, and the house is, stunning. And, you lay, you sun yourself. Of course, I'm a pasty white. I'm a milky, which is what they call me, milky white. And I got sun poisoning, which is always fun. It's always fun. The only thing that I saw was the Ben Carson thing. I didn't have TV, so I was watching on my phone. The Ben Carson, here. This guy is a moron, everybody. Ben Carson is an idiot. He is an absolute idiot. He is a disgrace. It is just all the best people. And I was like, you know what? I just don't want to have anything to do with politics. So we went like that for a while, just friends, family, mystical, magical places, some evidence of alien invasions, believe it or not, giant spheres that nobody knows how they got there. That have been there since 300 AD, according to the, archaeologists in the Costa Rica. And some think it's the Indians, but they have no idea how they transported or how they made. So others think it's aliens, extraterrestrials. And Howard's one of those, so he enjoyed the spheres, thinking, oh, that's how the aliens got. And we need an alien invasion. An alien invasion would unite not just this country. It would unite the freaking world against the outside invasion. He wanted alien, and everything was fine until we got on the plane and we crossed into America. Then we landed in America, and we were all getting our stuff. A nice, flight. Nobody did anything. Nobody drank too much. Nobody, a lot of dogs. It's like Noah's Ark on JetBlue anymore. Because everybody could bring their dog now. I mean, it's like emotional therapy, emotional support. I need a dog because if I leave him at home, I'll worry. And so the dog and nobody even ask. You're not even allowed to ask a question because of HIPAA. HIPAA, the Privacy Act. You can't even ask, what is your malady? Why do you need this giant dinosaur of a dog in row 25? Why do you need that? You're not even allowed to ask. So it's like an ark, and there's barking, and there's various babies crying. I mean, chickens are going to be next, and I'm going to bring a monkey home. They're just too freaking adorable. And so we were all okay, no matter what the thing was on the plane, no matter how many people. We get here. Everybody gets up and everybody's still with the Pura Vida. Everybody's still with the vacation mode. Everybody's still in vacation head. Everybody's still a little stoned. Everybody's still a little high. Everybody's still very relaxed. And may I help you with your overhead bed? Can I get that for you? Yeah, can I help you? It looks heavy. What nice, helpful, good, decent, wonderful. Nobody's, exposing the fact that, this person is tomorrow they're going to be wearing a Make America Great Again hat. Nothing like that. And then we're all up. We're all standing in the aisle. Everybody's waiting for the doors to open. Okay. All of a sudden, an announcement comes over the loud. Please return to your seats. Please return. And I'm like, the whole attitude's changed now. We're here in America. Everybody, get in your seats. Get in your seats. What's wrong? I see a police officer outside the open door on the jetway. I see the policeman standing there, and he's, he's like a lieutenant colonel because I could, read the insignia. And he's like, standing there, and he's, everybody's seated. He waits an appropriate amount of discomforting time, and then he comes onto the airplane. I'm like, oh no, please don't let me think this is like an immigration thing. Please, dear God, do not drag a woman and some children. I don't know what's going on. I have maybe there's a drug smuggler. I doubt it. Whatever. Okay, so all of a sudden he's talking to the flight attendant, and the flight attendant is like, do you have a name, like who we're looking for? He says, yeah, I have a name. Could you please announce Sharon Day? Gets over. Sharon Day, please come to the front of the aircraft. Thank you, Sharon Day. And this woman with jungle hair, long blonde jungle hair, about my age, starts, and she's walking through the plane, and she said, don't worry, I'm not in trouble. I'm the ambassador for Costa Rica. What? It was like the most undiplomatic thing I ever experienced in my whole. And you know what? I used to fly back from here to Washington, D.C. all the time. I mean, I have flown with the HUD secretary. I have flown with Chuck Schumer. I have flown with, you name it, from Congress. Okay? Nobody asks for a uniformed officer to board the aircraft to get everybody back in their seat so that she can announce herself to the world that I'm Donald Trump's hand-picked ambassador to Costa Rica. So I looked around. This woman has zero diplomatic experience, but she does have a $5.5 million triplex for sale in Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, that she has that. She was a former chairman of the art. She was a Republican operative for 20 years and a big Trump donor. And she's the ambassador. She's my representation to my country, Costa Rica. Oh my God. Sharon Day, you are the most undiplomatic, self-serving, self-indulgent. I don't even want to say.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
It is a virtual certainty that you will fight on a battlefield for America at some point in your life. You will lead soldiers in combat.
What?
It will happen.
It will happen.
Some of you will join the fight against radical Islamic terrorists in Afghanistan.
Really?
And Iraq.
And Iraq.
Some of you will join the fight on the Korean Peninsula and in the Indo-Pacific, where North Korea continues to threaten the peace and an increasingly militarized China challenges our presence in the region. Some of you will join the fight in Europe, where an aggressive Russia seeks to redraw international boundaries by force.
We're going to fight in Russia.
And some of you may even be called upon to serve in this hemisphere.
In this hemisphere.
And when that day comes, I know you will move to the sound of the guns.
The sound of the
Do your duty.
Or develop bone spurs like the President of the United States. Or you, Mike Pence, who never served a day in the military. I couldn't believe that. That is, it's like, welcome home. Memorial Day. It's Memorial Day. You're supposed to remember from World War, from the Civil War to World War I to World War II. That's what you're supposed to do on Memorial. And Mike Pence goes to West Point and tells these cadets that they will definitely fight, maybe even in this hemisphere. Maybe you'll even round up Central American children and put them in cages. Is that what you were getting at, Mike? And the president was over rage tweeting. He was just, mean girl tweeting his whole Japanese vacation and wishing Japan happy Memorial Day. They don't celebrate Memorial Day. I mean, this was so off the hook, and it's like, welcome home, welcome home. So I had to go read myself some Frederick Douglass. I had to go read like the real meaning of Memorial. Frederick Douglass actually gave a Decoration Day, which is what it was called, speech after the Civil War in, I believe it was like 1871. May 30th, 1871, that Memorial Day. And, he addressed that both sides, fine people on both sides issue. There were not good people on both sides of the Civil War. He said, we're sometimes asked in the name of patriotism to forget the merits of this fearful struggle and to remember with equal admiration those who struck at the nation's life and those who struck to save it. Those who fought for slavery and those who fought for liberty and justice. He said, I'm not a minister of mass. He's saying that the people who actually seceded from the Union to keep slavery, they were the bad guys. And he was very clear about who the bad guys were. There was no good people on both sides kind of a thing. So, that sort of, marinated in my soul, and I calmed the hell down. And then I saw Mike Pence address the cadets at West Point. I just couldn't believe he was telling them, America is a warmonger. Because that's what the message was. America loves war. America thinks war is an industry, and you are the cogs in the wheels of that industry that make it go. And you will kill somebody someday, and you will lead men into combat. It's for certain. And then I'm realizing the president didn't serve, and he went to Japan and was siding with Kim Jong-un, who he loves, over the Vice President Joe Biden on Memorial Day, on foreign soil, and that Mike Pence decided, he said, it's a virtual certainty that you will fight on a battlefield for America at some point in your life. You will lead soldiers in combat. It will happen. Unless, of course, you develop bone spurs or you're Mike Pence. Mike Pence never served in the military. His father and his son both did. So are we to believe that patriotism skips a generation? Not in my family, but maybe in his. Sick. It was the sickest Memorial Day speech. Both of them. They were, what a disgrace. What a disgusting disgrace. What a bunch of self-serving, self-involved, mean girls those two are. I mean, that's what was going on. It was just so, I tell you, spending Memorial Day in Japan, who figured out that calendar? Who figured that out? And I just kept thinking, he's very lucky that, he can travel with those bone spurs all the way over to Japan. All the way over to Japan. And then he says, Kim Jong-un made a statement that Joe Biden is a low IQ individual. He probably is, based on his record. I think I agree with Kim on that. Mean girls. I thought politics was supposed to stop at the water's edge. But that's just another edge that Donald Trump has gone over. And by the way, is there more of a dumb thing to say than is there more of a low IQ thing to say than someone has a low IQ and then tack on the word individual so that there's a 5-syllable word somewhere in your taunt, in your insult? Low IQ individual, low IQ. This is a clear message. This is a clear message that Donald Trump is obsessed with Joe Biden now. He thinks Joe Biden is, leading, and Joe Biden's going to be, his competitor. And so he's going to go and agree with a dictator, Kim Jong-un, on foreign soil on Memorial Day in order to, self-serve, in order to self-aggrandize, in order to, self-involve. It was, and just before Memorial Day, Pete Buttigieg called Trump out for this bone spur scam that he used to avoid going to Vietnam. And at that very moment, our president was at Arlington National Cemetery, symbolically hiding behind the tombstones of all the people that went in his place to Vietnam. Disgusting. And then he went to Japan and bonded with his favorite dictator, Kim Jong-un. I swear to God. So Buttigieg said that Trump, quote, took advantage of the fact that he was a child of a multimillionaire in order to pretend to be disabled so that somebody could go to war in his place. But Mayor Pete, Trump did his part by staying home and losing $1 billion more than any other American. Surely there's a place in your heart for a loser like that. And I will say Mayor Pete is so smart. He said, look, if he were a conscientious objector, I'd admire that. Yes, but of course we realize that would require a conscience. And if Trump had a conscience, well, if lacking a conscience is a disability, then he can park wherever he wants, is what that is. Oh my God, it's so horrible, to just sit there and contemplate what these men are doing. Because, we will never be destroyed by Iran. We will never be destroyed by outsiders. We can only ever be destroyed by insiders. And I gotta say, we're letting an enemy from within, I don't know about destroying us, but degrade us all around the world with that mouth of his, with that ego of his. It's just embarrassing.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Oh, look, everybody. Even Fox News thought what he did in Japan was disgusting.
In Japan, I do agree with Mark that it was shameful, and I'll raise him one because it was also unbelievably hypocritical for Donald Trump to go around bashing people for promoting the idea of super predators back in the 80s and 90s. This is a man who took out a full-page ad at his own expense in the New York newspapers calling for the death penalty for 5 young men who'd been, it turned out later, falsely accused of beating a woman in Central Park. Donald Trump himself was one of the most tough on crime loudmouths in New York City at that time. So I think once Joe Biden gets in a position to do it, he'll find it very easy to parry him on that issue.
Byron, is this a sign that he feels like if he could take out the former vice president, he'd have fun with the rest of the field?
Well, it is a sign of the enormous place that Joe Biden is occupying in the president's worldview at the moment. I mean, and I think he looks at it. He sees Joe Biden's lead in the polls. He remembers his own experience where he led almost wire to wire, which is not really the way it always works. But he looks at this Democratic field and says, well, who else is it going to be? So he's absolutely fixated on Biden. And the question you have to ask yourself, he should not be doing this in Japan. It looks bad. And what purpose does it serve for this Japanese trip to have done this?
Really, what was the purpose of going to Japan, wishing the Japanese a happy Memorial Day, which, we fought against them in World War II? Just saying, how could you wish the people who are buried in Arlington, because they fought in the Pacific during World War II against the Japanese and the death marches and all those things, the bridge over the river Kwai, how could you go there and wish them a happy Memorial Day and then trash Joe Biden over the crime bill of 1994, which is, I told you, that's there's two things that Biden is exposed on. One is the crime bill of 94, same with Hillary. And the other one is the Clarence Thomas, hearings with Anita Hill. So now, Trump is over in Japan and he's saying Kim Jong, he's literally quoting his lover, Kim Jong-un, and trashing Biden and wishing the jab. His brain is so malformed. I don't understand what the disease is that this man has, but it is obviously a lack of conscience married to self-serving, involved narcissism, and it's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. So I'm watching all that, and meanwhile, I just want you to know that there are pressing problems here in this country. I mean, like, real stuff is going on. There's 15 dead in the middle of the United States. You're having this cycle of dangerous storms. You're having this cycle of tornadoes and flooding. And the Midwest got slammed yesterday afternoon. Slammed. Illinois, heavy rain and hammered, a little town called Yorkville. Tornado touchdown in Iowa. You got, there's drone video of the flooding along the Arkansas River near Fort Smith. And the worst is yet to come. The river is going to crest, Tuesday? It feels like Monday. Tomorrow, the river's going to crest. It'll be 20 feet above flood stage. There's concern about the levees, which have never been tested to this limit before. Everybody in the Midwest is screaming, this is dire, this is dire. People are suffering. They're losing everything. They're losing their homes. They're losing their cars. They're losing everything. And you got Republicans who aren't even in Congress, right? There's a minimal amount of people in Congress right now. And before the Memorial Day weekend, there was a vote on a disaster relief bill, right? $19 billion in disaster relief. Part of that goes to the farmers who he's screwed with his ridiculous trade war that makes no sense to anybody. And the other part was, people still waiting for disaster relief from Hurricane Harvey, Florida in the Panhandle from last year's hurricane season, and of course, Puerto Rico. And so there was, agreement that there's no money for the wall in this disaster relief bill. And the president said he would sign it. Okay. He said, it's fine. Just send it to me. And so they put it on the floor for unanimous consent because, people were leaving and going home, and unanimous consent would have passed if there's no objection. You don't need everybody there, right? That's what a unanimous consent vote is. And if no one objects, it passes. Well, you had, one stupid House member stand up and object. And so the thing didn't pass and didn't go to the president's desk. And then they said, all right, well, we'll do it again today, Tuesday. They'll try it again today. Relief money. No disaster relief money. And the disasters are get the components to rebuild an electric grid by loading it onto a freaking ship and sending it over to Puerto Rico. He can't figure that out. So I mean, I've never seen partisanship in disaster relief bills. Well, what's his name? Rafael Cruz. You know him, right? Rafael Cruz, the one that Trump said's wife is ugly. That one. Yeah, this was his former chief of staff, this Chip Roy. He's a freshman in the House. And he literally won his election by 3%, 3 percentage points, right? So this guy's ripe for the pick in Texas. You can take this guy. You can actually take him. But he used the power that a single lawmaker has in the $19.1 billion package, okay? I mean, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And then today I was waiting to see if it would pass, and today it didn't pass either because one Congress member stood up and blocked it. This is just, who blocked it today? Thomas Massey, a Republican from Kentucky. They're going to turn our whole country into Kentucky. They're going to turn our whole country into Arkansas. They're going to turn our whole freaking country into Oklahoma. These freaking representatives, they are disgusting. That is just awful. And the weather is just, I mean, you got hurricanes, you got wildfires, you got floods going on, it's unbelievable. And they won't approve a disaster relief package. This to block it, said Sanford Bishop Jr., a Georgian representative, another Republican. He said, please don't judge the other 434 members of the House with what Chip Roy just did. But now you got Thomas Massie.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Oh, we're back. We're back with all the technical difficulties that we had before. All right. I just got to show you something. I saw this on my phone, okay, while I was away. And I just could not believe what I was watching. But this is what an idiot Ben Carson is, okay? Here's Katie Porter, a freshman member of Congress. She is literally an economics professor, okay? She teaches this stuff. And she is now talking to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and she's asking him basic questions about why are government, mortgaged properties, why do they get foreclosed on at such a high rate? What is the deal with REOs, real estate owned, which is the term, REO is the term for a foreclosed home, right? And she's trying to have a question and answer session with him, but he's such a moron. I don't know. Do you think he's high? Because I think he's so stoned. He just seems like he's baked. He just seems like, he's just, I don't know, just completely high.
Also like you to get back to me, if you don't mind, to explain the disparity in REO rates. Do you know what an REO is?
An Oreo?
No, not an Oreo. An REO. REO.
Real estate?
What's the O stand for?
Organization?
Owned. Real estate owned. That's what happens when a property goes to foreclosure. We call it an REO.
Oh my God.
And FHA loans have much higher REOs. That is, they go to foreclosure rather than to loss mitigation or to non-foreclosure alternatives like short sales than comparable loans at the GSEs. So I'd like to know why we're having more foreclosures that end in people losing their homes with stains to their credit and disruption to their communities and their neighborhoods at FHA than we are at the GSEs. Do you understand the relationship between the blight and the servicing problems?
Well, I understand that blight is a huge problem.
Do you think he's
and that it comes from your agency's inaction on servicing?
I'm not sure that I'm willing to accept that FHA is the cause of all the blight that we have.
I hope you feel differently after you read the report.
Oreos? So you know what he did? Do you know what he did? He thought that was funny. He thought it was funny that as the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, he thought it was funny that he didn't know that a REO was a property that went to foreclosure instead of an alternative like a short sale or some sort of mitigation on the loan, meaning, you take what you can get from the owner and you let. And he's Oreo. He sent her a family-sized box of cookies, Oreo cookies. And she was so gracious that she said, I'm very glad that he sent us a box of cookies, but what I'm really looking for are answers about how he's managing housing and urban development. Okay, then we had Representative Joyce Beatty. She's from Ohio. She apparently had the same exact conversation last year with the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Ben Carson, about a department that is supposed to, look into disparities in minority and female-owned properties, a disparity in the lending rate, a disparity in the ownership rates. And she had asked him last year, they're called AMWI, okay? The department is called AMWI. And she had asked him, and he's like, Amway? Amway?
Are you familiar with AMWI and what it is?
With who?
Amway.
Amway?
Amway. Come on, Mr. Secretary. Now, I asked you this when you were here last year, and you asked me to be nice to you, and you turned to your staff, Amway. and you have an OMWE director. And we wrote you a letter about it, and OMWE, Office of Minority Women and Inclusion. Do you have an OMWE director? Do you work with the OMWE director?
Well, of course we have an office of...
OMWE, not Amway, OMWE.
We have.
Do you know who that person is?
We have.
Do you know who that person is?
I cannot give you the name.
Okay. Would you do me a favor? Would you find out and would you send me a note back so we don't ever have to repeat this again?
We can send you a note on that.
Okay. Thank you.
She is so patient. She's speaking to our secretary of a giant government agency that is responsible for the quality of public housing, that is responsible for the foreclosure rates on FHA loans, that is responsible for making sure the housing market doesn't crash again. I mean, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mae. I mean, this guy is in charge of this major, major agency, okay? And she is so patient with him, like she's having to talk to a child. Do you know? And you know what's crazy? There is no OMWE department in housing and urban development. There's a director for minority lending, but there is no, he doesn't even know this. And she is so patient with him and so careful. Oh, come on, Mr. Secretary. We had this conversation last year, and you asked me to be nice to you. And you turned around and you asked your staff to make me be nice to you. And I was nice to you. And all I'm asking is for the name of the director of the minority office that controls the lending. I mean, it's so sick. And then Oreo. I mean, it was all the best people, everybody. All the best people. It's just sickening. It's sickening. And you know why? It's because this man is literally dismantling everything that is good and right about the United States. He is dismantling all of the agency. You know, you've got obviously we've got an issue with levees and infrastructure and massive changes in the strength of storms and tornadoes and And this man thinks that we should get rid of the environmental protections that we actually have. This man thinks that we should get rid of, climate science. This man thinks that we should supplant climate science with climate deniers, climate science deniers. You got the most insane. He just rolled back environmental regulations, okay? The things that Obama and the Congress fought for to, limit or at least cut back on greenhouse gas emissions, things that were initiated during the Obama administration. I mean, it's almost like if Obama did it, then it has to go. So he's looking in the courts to destroy the ACA. Now he's looking to roll back, the gas emissions, the car emission thing. He's Why? The industry has kept up with it. So what is his problem? I don't understand. I'm so. Don't you think that's a problem?
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
The Obama-Biden administration, you're proposing something very bold in your words, perhaps far-reaching, certainly. President Obama, Vice President Biden, they were not able to get even modest gun control measures through Congress when they were in office after Sandy Hook. So my question for you is,
what kind of sick
how
country
are you
is
going
this?
to do it? Even if you're elected president, you might not have a veto-proof majority in the House and the Senate. And if you do have that, you might have a lot of Democratic members who come from states where gun rights are very important, such as Montana. How will you be able to get something passed where Obama and Biden were not able to?
Well, this echoes to me of the civil rights movement, where civil rights legislation passed time and time again. The longest filibuster in the Senate was Strom Thurmond's trying to stop civil rights legislation from happening, and people said it couldn't be done, that there were states that were standing firmly against it. But you know what happened is we had leaders that called to the moral imagination of our country, called to the conscience of our nation, built the kind of coalitions necessary to tear down segregation. And so here we have a nation that has untold levels of carnage and violence and shootings every single day, suicides, 90 to 100 people dying every single day. I believe that just because we've failed in the past doesn't mean we will fail in the future. I believe it takes grit and fight and will, and we can muster that in the United States to do common sense things that do not take away people's Second Amendment rights. The only people that should be afraid of the kind of legislation I'm pushing are gun runners, criminals, and the corporate gun lobby.
And the corporate gun lobby. So the NRA, for instance, I cannot believe that we had a mass shooting on Friday. Today is only Monday, and there's there's nothing really on the TV about it except thoughts and prayers. Oh, it's too soon. Cory Booker and the entire Democratic Party have worked. Cory's in the Senate, so they haven't gotten to vote. But the House has. And we passed gun legislation. We passed H.R. 8. What we want has absolutely nothing to do with depriving you or ripping your gun out of your cold dead hand. What we're saying is that you need to have a license. You need a license to drive. You need a passport. You just go through a freaking process. We fingerprint you. You have a little interview. You take a gun safety course. What the hell is so bad? We have so many people in this country with all kinds of mental problems. The president is trying to undo the ACA that actually has mental health care in it to help pay for it. You have, post-traumatic stress syndrome. You have people that are, and we need to get rid of these freaking military-style assault weapons. We need to get rid of the high-capacity magazines. I mean, this is something the Democratic Party has been working on, and the House has passed, and the Senate will not take up. And suddenly, in this alternate universe known as the Republican Party, there is no legislation that would make a difference. You can't have any legislation on guns because if you had legislation on guns, it wouldn't make the world perfect. It wouldn't make the world safe. Cory Booker was the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. Newark, New Jersey, where you got little kids that literally have post-traumatic stress syndrome because of the sound of gunfire. And I know what PTSD is. My dad had it, and I'll tell you the truth. When I was first, on my own, I was really freaking poor. Just scraping by, making the decision: do I pay the rent? Do I pay my car payment? They're going to take my car away. I'll park it backwards so that the repo man doesn't come. All that stuff, right? And I lived in an apartment, a studio apartment in Queens, and it had cockroaches. It was infested with cockroaches. Okay. And then, I finally got a job as a clerk typist in an insurance company that happened to be in 3 Park Avenue, which was the exact same building. And I didn't realize it till day one of Air America. It was the exact same building as Air America. That was my very first job in New York. I think I was 17 freaking years old. Okay, 3 Park Avenue, 41st floor. So now I'm in the elevator going to Air America for the very first time. I'm walking up to, and it's a pink, it's literally hideous. It's a pink, giant granite building, okay? And I'm walking into this pink building. I'm going, why is this so freaking familiar? And I put my hand on the button to press the 41st floor, which is where Air America is. And I realize, oh my God, this was my very first job that got me out of the cockroach-infested apartment that I lived in. As a clerk typist, not even as a secretary, just a clerk typist in an insurance company, typing out claim rejections. That's what my job was. When I finally got to a place that didn't have an infestation of cockroaches, I would see things moving out of the corner of the peripheral vision. You would see things moving, right? You would see, and it would, all of a sudden you'd get all, like PTSD. You would think, oh my God, there's a bug. Oh my God, there's a bug. I still have it to this day. That's what PTSD is. And we have people that, need help walking among us, and you never know what their trigger is going to be. And they have access to freaking military-style weapons. And if they become disgruntled at work, or if they become, I don't know, whatever their thing is. This guy that shot up Vegas, we still don't know what the hell that was about. You know why? Because nobody at the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, nobody at Health and Human Services, nobody at the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, is permitted by federal law to study anything that contributes to the carnage in America if it has any connection to a gun. That is bizarre and stupid. It's like saying we don't want to know. It's telling America that we like being ignorant. We don't care. We don't want to know. We don't want to study gun violence. We don't want to study community-based programs that may work. We don't want to study PTSD and how it's the actual help, the therapy is applied, and is it effective? Is it a good application? Is it do we identify enough people? And how could we identify enough people? You had Dylan Roof purchased a gun because the FBI didn't complete his background check. And the law said, oh, well, if we're not done in 10 days, you get your gun. How stupid is that? If it's taking more than 10 days to do a background check, it's because something showed up. And that's what, idiot boy Mulvaney is using as an example. Of fixing things, why is the NRA tax exempt? Why? Why is this lobby, and it's a lobby shop for gun manufacturers. That's all the NRA is, and we know there's all kinds of money issues, and there's fraud, and there's usage of money for personal, aggrandizement and personal luxury, just like the church, just like these mega churches. These guys buy bigger and badder jets and all that, and they claim they don't want to be in a tube full of demons, so they have to have private jets, because you can't put a pastor, you can't put a preacher in a tube full of demons. It will somehow inhibit his ability to preach. I mean, this is a sick thing, right? Why not look at why the NRA is tax exempt? Well, that's what Cory Booker's plan is. Cory Booker's plan, which doesn't have a prayer of being introduced in the Senate because of Mitch McConnell, is to figure out why the NRA is a tax-exempt lobby shop, okay? To figure out what community-based programs actually work when it comes to gun violence. Because he was mayor of Newark, and because kids in his town and where he was a mayor suffer from PTSD to the point where on the 4th of July, when firecrackers go off, those kids want to hide in closets like a scared dog. They have that visceral reaction to gunfire so that they hear firecrackers and they just want to crawl under a bed because there's been so many guns fired in their neighborhood. I mean, this is not a problem that can't be solved. It's just there is no desire on the part of the Republicans to solve it. So they always trot out the same damn thing. We need, I've said this after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, that we need a line of Hallmark cards for post-mass shootings so you can send your very best. Thoughts and prayers. Too soon. Let's not get political. Politics is politics to solve the problems of the people. In this country, it's become a way to funnel money to individuals so that they never solve the problems of the people. And that's why red states look like crap holes. That's why red states are so freaking poor. That's why they have the worst health care.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Are you confident that it was nobody in the White House or a White House advance person that made the request to the Navy to cover up the USS John McCain?
Oh, no, I absolutely believe it was probably somebody in the advance team.
It was on your team. Is there any consequences for this?
I'll answer your question. An advance team is hundreds of people. You know this better than me. You've been overseas with the President of the United States. The fact that some 23 or 24-year-old person on the advance team went to that site and said, oh, my goodness, there's the John McCain. We all know how the President feels about the former senator. Maybe that's not the best backdrop. Can somebody look into moving it? That's not an unreasonable thing to
Seriously?
ask. It's not. And
it's not an unreasonable thing about a U.S. Navy ship that we're worried the President of the United States, it might get set off because a ship that was named for John McCain's grandfather first.
Yes, I know. It's a different John McCain. We get that. But you're the third or fourth journalist who's asked me, is someone going to get fired for this? No. If you're not getting along...
No, the President thought it was well-meaning.
And again, the President's feelings towards the former senator are well-known. They're well-known throughout the office. They're well-known in the media. But to think you're going to get fired over this is silly.
You're a horrible horrible person, Mick Mulvaney. You are beneath the spit on the belly of a snake. You are a terrible traitor to this nation. You think somebody ought to get fired for moving or attempting to move the USS John McCain so not to offend the president? No, nobody's going to. And it was probably a 23 or 24-year-old. Somehow that, first of all, it was the White House military office calling the U.S. Navy, telling them to minimize the visibility of the USS John McCain. And we know this because there was email back and forth between the White House military office and the people on the ground in Japan. And then Mulvaney, you know, he went to every freaking Sunday show, and then he went to Fox News. And Chris Wallace said, but there are emails. How could you sit here and blame this on some 23, 24-year-old dude? And isn't this disgusting? No.
During the president's trip to, or actually before he went to Japan, the White House military office sent this email to the Navy. And I want to read it. USS John McCain needs to be out of sight. Once the story became public, here was the president's reaction.
Now, somebody did it because they thought I didn't like it, okay? And they were well-meaning, I will say. I didn't know anything about it. I would never have done that.
Two questions, and I got about 30 seconds for you. What does the president mean it was well-meaning? Yeah. And second, have you, as White House chief of staff, determined how it was that somebody in the military office in the White House decided it would be a good idea to hide the ship that is in honor of an American war hero?
All right, in the 15 seconds you left me out of your 30, the president didn't know about it. I didn't know about it. Look, literally hundreds of people are involved in moving the president overseas. The president's feelings about the former senator are well known. The fact that a low-level person might have asked the question shouldn't surprise anybody. We think it's much ado about nothing.
You're politicizing the military.
Will somebody in the White House be disciplined?
For what? For asking an innocuous question about that? No. Did someone get disciplined at Fox News for saying that so-and-so doesn't want to sit next to so-and-so at a meeting? No. Again, this is a minor issue that we think the media is trying to make into a larger matter.
Well, let me just say, to pursue it, that the Pentagon chief, Shanahan, had his chief of staff call the White House to say that the Pentagon must not be politicized. So apparently, Patrick Shanahan doesn't think it's a minor idea.
Yeah.
But again, nothing happened because asked a question during the preparation for a trip. Again, if you understood how many people were involved in this, you understand the number of folks who could have asked this question. And if a 23 or 24-year-old person says, look, is it really a good idea for this ship to be in the background? That is not an unreasonable question to have, and it's certainly not something that takes up 2 minutes of national television on Sunday.
Stunned silence, even on the alternate universe, even in the alternate universe of Fox News. I mean, just stunned. The Navy says it was asked to minimize visibility of the USS McCain for the Trump visit. Okay, a request was made. Here's the state. A request was made to the U.S. Navy to minimize the visibility of the USS John S. McCain. However, all ships remained in their normal configuration during the president's visit. Can I just insert this? Do you know why the USS John McCain was in port and unable to be moved as the request requested? The reason why the USS John McCain was unable to be moved is because it was in for repairs after it had a collision at sea and 10 sailors on it died. That's your president. He didn't want those sailors on board that ship to attend his little dog and pony show in Japan because their caps would say USS John McCain. And I bet you there are a lot of sailors on the USS John McCain who are 18 and 19 years old, never mind 23 and 24, which somehow minimizes the idea that Trump had the White House military liaison call the Navy and tell them, I don't want to see that ship, and I don't want the people on board that ship near me because they'll wear the baseball cap with McCain's name on it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know about it. I want it removed from my sight. I mean, that is so sick. No, it was a 23 or 24-year-old who asked a question. That is not the truth. And when confronted with the fact that there are emails from the White House, well, it's still a 23 or 24-year-old, and he just asked a question and blah, blah, blah. The politicization, I have to say that really slow. It's like how I speak Spanish. My friends in Costa Rica, when they're teaching me Spanish, they always say, break the words up, break them up. So politicization of the military is unconscionable. It is something no American should stand for. It is something America will be super, super sorry for if we don't nip it in the bud. These sailors, the air crew, the WASPs, were wearing patches with Donald Trump's freaking orange face on them saying, make air crew great again. This is more than asking a question. There are emails that clearly say that the king didn't want to see the USS John McCain. The king wanted it removed from his sight of vision. The king didn't want USS McCain caps in front of it. He didn't want to have to read this man's name. And you know why, right? You know why? The reason why is because when the Steele dossier was offered to the United States, it was offered by Chris Steele to John McCain and Lindsey Graham. It was offered to John McCain. And John McCain showed it to Lindsey Graham. And this is why no one knows how Lindsey Graham's being blackmailed or what the deal with him is, why he's such a bootlicker, but something really ugly is going on beneath the surface there. But when John McCain showed it to Lindsey Graham said, you need to tell the FBI. You need to give the Steele dossier to the FBI. And they did, and this was in October. So obviously the FBI counterintelligence investigation began in June. And it wasn't until June, July, August, September, October that the Steele dossier ended up in John McCain's possession, that Chris Steele gave it to him. And he turned it over to the FBI. This is why Trump hates him. This is why. Because McCain, although I disagree with him on everything from Iraq to Iran, gave it to the FBI.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
And they call us snowflakes. Don't you love that? They call us He can't bear to see John McCain's name on a baseball cap, but we're the snowflakes, right? We're the ones that just melt and just, turn to water. Oh, please, this man is such a P word. And I hate that word, but he is that. He is so completely bizarre and so easily shattered. He's such a weak man. He's lazy. He's weak. He's stupid. He's everything that he says that, his opponents are. That's what he is. And, it's just really... Oh, and you know what? I meant to say this again. Please do a couple things for us today. On Twitter, if you're on Twitter, and a lot of people are, my Twitter, my personal one is at Randi Rhodes, RandiRhodes, okay? Do two things. Follow me. Thank you. And then click on the last tweet. And download that Audible book, okay? It is the Mueller report being read by beautiful voices, actors, actresses, just people with fabulous voices, very soothing, very comforting. It will take you 19 hours to get through it, but you will then understand what a slimeball, what a weak person who didn't think he could do it on his own, who knew he couldn't win by himself, who didn't have the courage of any convictions, let alone convictions he has. He has no convictions. He turned to a foreign adversary. He expected to benefit. He was embracing them. He was, asking them for help. It's all in there. And then when a counterintelligence investigation was opened to find out why Russia was interfering in our election, and who in Russia, was it the military, was it the intelligence services, was it Putin himself, and the answer was yes, yes, and yes, this president obstructed an investigation to protect and defend the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. This is impeachable. Okay, I don't use the word treason because we're not in a time of war with Russia. So that's not the proper word. But this man sold out his country, which makes him a traitor. He is a traitor to this nation. So please go to at Randi Rhodes, follow me, and then click on that and just know that it's free and you can listen to it and you will understand everything that's about to happen beginning next Monday when some federal prosecutors step up to the plate. Now, I don't know where this Boy Scout, I don't know where this Marine who went to Vietnam and took a bullet, such courage, such bravery, after he graduated from Princeton, Bob Mueller. I don't know what he's so freaking afraid of. But they're in negotiations. Maybe he'll testify. Maybe he won't. Meanwhile, here's another piece of breaking news today. A key witness in Mueller's investigation. You've probably heard me talk about this guy. His name's George Nader, another pedophile. Okay? I mean, this is where Pizzagate was dreamt up. You talk about projection. I mean, Donald Trump bragged about inspecting 15-year-olds at the Miss Teen USA pageant and how he could take liberties with them and inspect them when they were naked in the dress. And you got Jeffrey Epstein, his best freaking friend, and Alan Dershowitz, who's somehow involved in this Jeffrey Epstein case, which was massive, massive human trafficking of poor girls here in Florida who lived in trailer parks or came from broken families or, were just not supported well enough in their lives not to end up hanging out with slime balls like Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump and Dershowitz, right? So they're all friends. And now you got this other guy, George Nader. Now, George Nader is a Lebanese businessman who was charged 28 years ago with being a pedophile, right? And the United States intelligence services and other influential figures within the Republican Party actually argued privately to a court to let him go because he was so involved in our national security affairs. And now we find out that on January of 2018, George Nader was again served with a subpoena and cooperated with authorities. And that is why he provided grand jury testimony about his interaction with Trump supporters. And now that the thing is over, he's going to have to stand trial on bringing more child pornography into the United States. Now, he was the guy who arranged, George Nader, if it rings a bell, it's because Nader is the guy that arranged for Eric Prince to go to the Seychelles Islands to meet with the Russians. That's who George Nader is. He was the liaison between Eric Prince, who was not officially part of the campaign, but who now has a contract with the United Arab Emirates to provide some sort of mercenary corps, right? And so that meeting in the Seychelles was with the Middle East leaders of the UAE and Russians who were interested in making contact with the administration in early 2017. And Nader is the person that actually arranged this meeting. Now, Eric Prince lied to Congress. He told Congress, it was just happenstance. He happened to be at this fabulous location in the Indian Ocean on the Seychelles Islands, and he was having a beer at the bar of like this, fabulous, I think it was a Four Seasons or I don't know. And that the Russian official just happened to be there. They had a beer and that was it. Well, George Nader, now we know why he was testifying. George Nader testified, no, I arranged that meeting. Eric Prince knew damn well, what he was going to do when he got there and who was going to be there. And it was prearranged, just like the Trump Tower meeting was prearranged. And, so now he's been indicted by the federal officials on child pornography charges, according to court documents. And he has a previous record on the same kinds of charges. He was charged in Virginia. He's going to make his initial court appearance in New York. Now, over the weekend, it's in the homework. There's a lot of good stuff in the homework today. The first link in the homework is also the Audible link to the Mueller report, read by actors and actresses in beautiful voices, so you can listen to it. That's the first link in the homework. And if you go through the links in the homework, you will see a very long read, I think it was the New York Times story, about how the UAE and Russia are rearranging all of our political alliances. All of our allies are changing. We are now siding with dictators and human rights abusers and, people who are there because of a hereditary monarchy, which I think is what Trump loves the most. Which is why he says he's fallen in love with Kim Jong-un, who apparently executed 4 of the nuclear negotiators for failure to, get Trump off of their back. And now they're aligned with Vladimir Putin. And apparently Putin said, get rid of these guys. They know too much. Now a picture of this Hyuk Chol guy, right? Kim Hyuk Chol, the guy who was supposedly executed, suddenly appears in what everybody thinks is a photoshopped picture with his hands over his face, like somebody's about to shoot him. I don't know. This is so messed up, and this man has got to be held accountable. This president of ours is so unworthy of the office he holds. He's so unworthy of being anybody who's admired, anybody who's given any honor, any trust at all by anybody ever. Oh, and then idiot boy Jared sits down with Axios, and he can't, he says, oh, birtherism? No, that's not racist. There's not a racist bone in his body.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Excuse me, if you're not going to start an impeachment inquiry into Donald Trump, describe the president for whom you would start an impeachment inquiry,
Seriously.
right? I mean, a president who abused power, a president who used the instruments of the state to go after his political enemies, a president who lied to the American people all the time. I mean, just describe this hypothetical president who does something that Donald Trump doesn't do all the time.
That's, like I said, impeachment inquiries were built for this man. They were designed for this man because this man literally has zero love for this country, zero respect for the Constitution, an understanding of what it is and how it works. He is an autocrat. He thinks he's starting some hereditary monarchy here, and that is not our country. It has no relationship to our country, what he wants America to do and look like and be. None whatsoever. And now you got these religious losers. I mean, it's amazing to me. You got Jerry Falwell Jr. or what's his name? No, Franklin Graham Jr., who is out there, telling everybody they need to pray for this president. This is a man who also is in some scandal with a pool boy. Him and his wife paid a pool boy like $2 million to destroy photographs of him and his wife. Why is everyone around this president the slimiest of the slimy, the most hypocritical of the hypocrites, the most disgusting of the disgusting? Why? Why are they all without any morality, any conscience, any care, it's unbelievable. So you got George Nader over here with his child pornography crap. You've got the Franklin Grahams of the world. You got Eric Prince and Roger Stone, and I mean these are all just like really twisted. I can't even imagine if Obama was friends with any of them, like what the press would have done. They attacked that man because he wore tan pants and had a beer summit. A beer summit to try and have a conversation about racism in the police. Oh my God. Set the world on fire. It's so sick. It's so wrong. And it's so preventable. But like I said, good news. Next Monday, we should start seeing hearings. Sam in Washington State.
Hey, Randi, I just wanted to point out that this whole thing with the ship controversy and the Trumpers' response to it, it totally proves the point that Michael Cohen made about Trump doesn't tell you what to do. He speaks in code.
Exactly.
And so it doesn't matter whether he specifically told them. Somebody along the line, or many people along the line, assumed that's what Trump was telling them to do.
Right. Exactly. And it wasn't some 23 or 24-year-old who asked a question. It was a directive from the White House military office to the Navy in Japan that said minimize the visibility of the McCain because our snowflake president will be offended by it.
Exactly. And whether or not the snowflake president said, I would be offended, these people are so, hypnotized or whatever the word is, that they just, they look at everything in that sort of response. Is this the code he's telling me?
Right. And that's why Jared Kushner got boxed into a corner by Axios. I wish I could play it, but that Axios show is on HBO, and HBO won't let me play any of their stuff, so I can't play it. I would love to be able to play the Axios stuff. I would love to be able to play Bill Maher for you, but I can't. But anyway, so there was Jared being asked questions by a reporter for Axios, and they asked him, is Trump a racist? Is Trump easily upset? He said, no, there's not a racist. Go, well, birtherism. He go, well, I wasn't around when he was doing that. What, are you kidding me? He started his campaign by coming down an escalator, saying Mexicans were rapists. You don't remember him being racist? You don't remember Charlottesville? You don't remember birtherism? You don't remember anything? And the reason why they can't say anything is because if they do, Trump's wrath, right? Trump will yell at him. Trump will take away his security clearance. Trump will retaliate against anybody who doesn't hear his desires, hopes, and dreams.
Exactly. That they're so cowed by him that nobody's willing to say, hey, Emperor, you're wearing no clothes.
Exactly. And that does prove what Michael Cohen said. And that's what I was getting at, on Friday when I was talking about the politicization of the military, is that this is exactly what the military hears from their commander-in-chief. They hear a man who wants the military to wear Make America Great Again caps, and so they do. They see a military, they hear from him that he wants a patch with his face on their sleeve, so they sew one on.
Well, hey, acting defense secretary, the guy from Boeing, who is trying to deny that anything's going on and he's not going to investigate it, he's acting. He wants the full-time job. Is he going to stand up and say this is wrong? Of course not.
Right. Well, he says he's got concerns and that he doesn't want to see the military politicized. Now, when you have a Boeing executive, saying that, maybe everybody ought to wake up. Maybe everybody ought to sit up straight and say, here's a guy who can funnel contract, and he's risking a little bit of something here by saying the military shouldn't go down this road. This would be bad.
Right. But that's as far as he's going to go.
No, definitely. No question.
Well, thanks for all you do, Randy. Love you.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate you, too. Thanks for calling.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. So the other thing is, so you can go to my Twitter at Randi Rhodes and follow me, and then click on the Audible. I think it's very important that you start listening to this report. And then the other thing is, it's it's the third of the month, but we need your monthly support, and we only harangue you because we are completely supported by you to do your very best at the beginning of the month so we could pay all kinds of bills that we have to pay. I just paid the rent. Just paid that. Daryl in Phoenix.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. I understand about the idea about not going directly to impeachment.
Mm-hmm.
But the clip you just played about the RE show with Eugene Robinson, and I agree with what he said on there.
Me too.
So I wonder then what's holding Nancy Pelosi up from demanding these impeachment inquiries?
Nothing. It'll start on Monday. Well, they've already been. Here's the thing. They're trying to get witnesses together. Now, Mueller, they're in negotiation. Mueller needs to do his damn duty, okay? And his duty is to show up and give us a televised version of his report. He thinks everybody's just going to read his damn report. Well, I got news for him. This entire country is either so busy keeping the freaking roof over our heads and paying the bills, working 2 jobs, sometimes 3, that we don't have time to read his report. That's why I want the Audible thing. I want you to have it. It's free, right? Well, that's number one. Well, and number two, if it isn't on the TV, it didn't happen. Nancy Pelosi is going to be, the Judiciary Committee, Gerald Nadler, is going to start the hearings on Monday. And so far, the witnesses I have seen are simply federal prosecutors and John Dean, the White House counsel to Richard Nixon.
Okay, but the thing is, the people that Trump are telling not to show up, why isn't Nadler and I forget the guy that heads up the Congress Judiciary Committee right now?
It's Nadler.
The black guy. No, the older black guy.
Oh, Clyburn? No, he
no, not Clyburn.
Who?
Dang it. Oh, anyway, why aren't they financially penalizing these people for every day they refuse to answer those subpoenas?
Well, that has never been tried.
Why don't they? Why? What's preventing?
Well,
them
so
from
that
doing it?
you don't know. I mean, you could go to court, and they have gone to court, and it takes time for the court to decide. You know, it's not just that you go to court and you demand to be heard, and they go, "Okay, let's hear you," and then we'll make a decision.
So
it
they can't penalize them.
Not without the court. It's never been done.
So all this talk about penalizing them and possibly putting them in jail for not honoring those subpoenas.
Okay, so there's two different things
has
here.
To go through court?
No, there's two different things here. The sergeant at arms has gone and taken people into custody before. Now, it hasn't happened, I think, since 1934. But we've never fined anybody. That's without precedent. That's just never happened. But the sergeant at
They don't have that right? They don't have that authority?
That's what the court would decide. What is the mystery here?
Okay. It was my understanding that they already had that.
It's never happened. There's no precedent for the fine for money damages, but there is for the sergeant at arms
Okay, but they do control the finances of the different departments, right?
They could vote not to finance the government. They could do that too, but then, we get blamed
not
for
the government. I'm talking about particular agencies that are responding to Trump about not showing up.
So that's that. Okay, why now? We'll talk about that tomorrow. Okay, all right. Not enough time here. Okay, thank you, everybody.
The Randi.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
Good luck, everybody. Good luck. Oh, man. So tomorrow is actually D-Day. Tomorrow is the 75th anniversary of D-Day, but we begin to commemorate it today, except for our president, who decided to go to Ireland to promote his golf club. No, I'm not kidding. That's where he is. He's in Ireland. And you know what he was doing at 2 o'clock in the morning? He was tweeting at 2 a.m. in London. He was tweeting about Bette Midler. Bette Midler, that icon. Bette Midler, who's entertained troops herself, who has made movies to salute the people who came before her, who went to entertain troops for the boys. Overlooked, great movie. And he decided that on the eve of the beginning of the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of D-Day, which makes me think of my dad all day today, all day this morning. You know, it was weird. I was sitting at my computer, and I thought Howard left because he said goodbye and gave me a kiss. And I thought he left. And then I was sitting at my computer, and I like for my computers to face the wall so there's no distractions. And so the door is always behind me. And so I saw something move, a big man move behind me, and I thought it was my dad, but it was Howard. So, you know, he was on my mind all day today, and I actually, you know, I looked up his grave, and, you know, my dad, when he died, what he wanted on his grave, and what is on his grave, is his name, a Jewish star, Army, World War II veteran. That is what my father wanted on his grave, and that is what is on my father's grave. And you know, the four most dangerous missions, I don't even know if everybody appreciates like what D-Day was. D-Day was a massive casualty loss. We fought D-Day with I believe, you know, it's somewhat disputed, but if you want to know why it's called D-Day, D apparently stands for day. When you look at some historians, there might be somebody in the audience that has a different opinion about that, but as far as I know, I always thought D stood for day. Day. I don't know. But so what it was it was an invasion of the Allied troops. Who were the Allied troops? We fought with Britain, okay, where Donald Trump just wore the most embarrassing outfits in the history of outfits. I don't know what's going on with his clothes. I mean, it's he you know, and if we had Donald Trump as president instead of Roosevelt, and you know, the voice there in that clip was the Allied Supreme Commander, who was General Eisenhower, who went on to become our president. But if we would have had Trump during these days, he probably would have said something along the lines of, there are good people on both sides. Yeah, let that sink in for a minute, okay? But what D-Day was we fought with the Brits, we fought with the Canadians, and the United States. We were the Allied troops. And France had become occupied by the Nazis. And so what we did was we needed to get a foothold on continental Europe. And D-Day was the beginning of getting our foothold in Europe. And so we invaded with about 160, some people say 156, about 160,000 Allied troops into Nazi-occupied France. It started tomorrow, June 6, 1944, and it was the largest seaborne invasion in history, and it was a major turning point in World War II, but it did come with a catastrophic human toll. You know, no one knows exactly how many people died, but it's about 4,000 Americans and Allied forces. It's about 4,000 Germans. And D-Day actually lasted, well, the invasion, you know, was a day, but then the actual campaign lasted for about 3 months. And we lost there were about 20,000 French people who were killed. So this is the beginning of the commemoration of this invasion that began 75 years ago, where hundreds of thousands of Allied and Axis soldiers, and of course, you know, Germany was and civilians died. They were wounded. The greatest risks in this operation were borne by our American troops. They did everything from storm the beaches at Normandy, stormed Omaha Beach, stormed Utah Beach, climbed cliffs to expose German artillery, operations, you know, where German artillery had been up on the cliffs. They set up the African American troops. It was a segregated war. So one of the groups, I want to get it right. Yeah, it was the 320th Balloon Barrage Battalion. Now, these combat troops, they landed on Utah Beach, and they set up these key lines of defense to prevent the Luftwaffe, the raiders, from strafing the Army and the troops and the supply chains that were going to come in. Because we knew that as soon as the landings began, that the German air attacks would start, and it would be a major threat to, the troops arriving in the thousands. And we came in, on landing crafts, and so to defend against the air raids, they turned to defensive weaponry units. There were 621 African-American soldiers in the 320th Barrage Balloon Battalion. These guys, they did an amazing thing. They had to land with 125-pound blimps. They worked in teams to anchor those blimps to the ground. Every blimp was filled with hydrogen, and they were connected to these small bombs that could denote if enemy aircraft that could detonate if enemy aircraft made contact with the cables. So they came ashore on Utah Beach. There were about 150 landing crafts on the morning of June 6th. And they faced the same dangers that the infantry did, but their added heavy lift came because they had to bring in these really stinking heavy cables and these balloons that they had to set up on the beach. They set up these barrage balloons. They dug trenches to take cover for themselves, and then their fellow soldiers invaded. This is why the 101st Airborne and the 82nd Airborne are so famous. Those were the earliest paratroopers of the U.S. Army, the 101st and the 82nd Airborne. These guys literally paratrooped. They jumped and they jumped from airplanes in really bad weather. It was freezing freaking cold below, in the dark, facing these unrelenting attacks, okay? Some of them refer to these guys as the Pathfinders. Others refer to them as the Screaming Eagles. But these were the first guys in, and they weren't out to engage in combat. They were supposed to set up the lights. That's why they're called Pathfinders. They were to set up lights and flares and mark the drop zones. But these guys paid a heavy price.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
You were not able to serve in Vietnam because of a bone spur condition in your feet. Do you wish you'd been able to serve? Would you like to have served your country?
Well, I was never a fan of that war, I'll be honest with you. I thought it was a terrible war. I thought it was very far away. Nobody ever, you're talking about Vietnam, and at that time, nobody ever heard of the country. Today, they're doing very well. In fact, on trade, they are brutal. They're very brutal. They're great negotiators. They're great business people. But nobody heard of Vietnam, and they say, what are we doing? So many people dying. What is happening over there? So I was never a fan. This isn't like I'm fighting against Nazi Germany. We're fighting against Hitler. And I was like a lot of people. Now, I wasn't out in the streets marching. I wasn't saying, I'm going to move to Canada, which a lot of people did. But no, I was not a fan of that war. That war was not something
Would you
that
like
we
to
should have
have
been
served
involved.
generally, perhaps in another?
I would not have minded that at all. I would have been honored, but I think I make up for it right now. I look, $700 billion I gave last year, and then this year $716 billion. And I think I'm making up for it rapidly because we're rebuilding our military at a level that it's never seen before.
He is such an idiot. He's so... the man goes to England. Oh, I hope his bone spurs don't act up. It's very damp. Very damp. Could be painful for the bone spurs, which he does not have. Okay? And again, if Trump would have been the president during the time of Mussolini, Hitler, and Franco, he would have said that there were some good people on all sides. He would have said that. That would have been his position. Because you know what? His love for Putin and Kim, he would have been smitten with Hitler. He would have been smitten with Mussolini, because this man is a combination of like Hitler's personal warmth and Mussolini's quiet dignity. That's who this man is. So, you've got these commemoration ceremonies going on today, and you've got all these veterans in their 90s, and their old uniforms fit better than this man's wardrobe now. It's just, I know fat people like to dress baggy. I get it. I'm wearing a baggy ass shirt today because I feel bloated. I get it. I understand. But why does he have to look like he's wearing a tarp all the time? What is that? Just go ahead and wear robes to fit in with your Saudi buddies. Oh, I can't stand him. He just irritates me. Why didn't you go to Vietnam? Well, it was so far away. I mean, it was so far away and no one ever heard of the country. Veterans deal with issues that, and I'm not talking about just veteran. I'm talking about combat veterans like my dad. I told you, I can't stop thinking about him today. He was part of he wasn't, in the 101st or the 82nd. He was in the Army. He was in the infantry. But my father was brutally wounded in World War II. When he came back, he was not the same man who left. A fun guy from Brooklyn who fell in love with my mother. His entire life changed because of the things that you see and the decisions that you make and the losing of buddies. Somebody standing next to you, somebody in a foxhole gets picked off, and you're right freaking there. These are things nobody wants to talk about. Everybody loves to talk about, the Band of Brothers and the heroism, and that's part of it too. It is part of it. But the story, the dirty underbelly of war is the moral damage, the psychological damage, the way men come home, and now women come home with holes in them, literally. And I don't mean from bullets, I mean from the experience. Big, giant, gaping holes, and no one wants to talk about it. I will say, in World War II, this is just unbelievable how in World War II we had like 14% of the people living in the United States who participated in World War II. And then in Vietnam, I think we had like 10%. And now, do you know how many people participate in our endless, ongoing, undercover, never discussed wars? 0.86% of us are involved in any way in the military. And this man is going to say, oh, it's too far away. The experience is that far away and 40 years ago, and there are people who live with us side by side at the coffee maker today, at the Walmart, greeting you, all kinds of people who walk around with these emotional scars, but it's too far away for him. And let me tell you something. Before he talked about, it was so far away, I didn't approve of it, I didn't know where it was. And before he went to Ireland to promote his freaking golf club instead of being in Normandy, he trashed John McCain again. He was asked about his feud with John McCain, and he actually lied about that too. Oh, I don't have a feud with him. Well, he's dead. I don't have a feud with him. People ask me about him, and I'm so honest. He didn't know about the White House office of the military reaching out to the Navy in Tokyo, telling them to minimize the visibility of the USS John McCain. He didn't know about it. His White House office did it.
Not a personal thing. I knew Senator John McCain well. I liked him. I respected him. I quite enjoyed your battle with him when he was alive. You would give it to him, he'd give it to you, and it went on. It seems a little beneath you, if you don't mind me saying, that now he's dead, you're carrying on attacking him. Is it not time to let it go?
No, I don't attack him. People ask me, like you're asking me. I didn't bring his name up, you did.
Sure.
You brought his name up, John McCain.
Oh, my God.
I'm not attacking him at all. I don't think about him. I was not a fan. I didn't like what he did to health care. I didn't like how he handled the veterans because I got him choice. He was always unable. He was on committees that he could have done.
Dead, Mr. President. I mean, there has to come a time, isn't there?
Excuse me, but Piers, you're asking me a question.
Sure.
If you don't ask me about John McCain, I would never talk to him.
I agree.
Somebody asked me the same question the other day.
But I'm asking because you know the battleship thing last week where, there's somebody...
But I knew nothing about that. I'm not even sure it happened.
I'm not even sure it happened. The Navy confirmed it. There were emails clearly describing what the White House asked the Navy to do about the visibility of the USS John McCain, that the sailors on the USS John McCain were disinvited from the president's speech because he didn't want to see the baseball caps that said USS John McCain. He's not even sure it happened. Please, dear God, do not call me, do not tweet me, do not write me, do not do anything with me with regard to this president being somebody that should be president. Okay? And what is this? Oh, I never brought him up. You bring him up at stump speeches. You bring him up at your stupid campaign rallies. You bring him up all the freaking time. You tell the United States of America that the reason why you don't like him is because the Steele dossier was given to him by Chris Steele, and he showed it to Lindsey Graham, who said, give it to the FBI. You've said that out loud. The man has passed away. And now he says any trade deal with the UK, they want their National Health Service destroyed. He wants it on the table. He's not satisfied with destroying healthcare for Americans. Now he's doing it to other countries who have had universal coverage for generations. I don't know who he thinks he is, but he is an international disgrace. He is a failure as a human being and a total failure as a man.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Next, I wanted to ask you about your military. Is this week you tweeted your support for the LGBT community around the world where they're being persecuted or excluded.
It's terrible.
Which does prompt the obvious question. If you feel that protective of the LGBT community, why did you feel the need to ban transgender people from serving in the US military?
Because they take massive amounts of drugs. They have to. And also, and you're not allowed to take drugs. You know, in the military, you're not allowed to take any drugs. You take an aspirin.
What?
And they have to. After the operation, they have to. They have no choice. They have to. And that you would actually have to break rules and regulations in order to have that.
But the cost of the medication is minuscule compared to the overall budget, right? You accept that. The US military spends a lot more money, for example, on giving Viagra to service men and women, or service men.
I didn't know they did that.
Than it does actually on medical bills for transgender people.
That?
And so it just seems to me an unnecessary thing for a guy who wants to be supportive of LGBT rights and the community around the world, that you've taken this action.
Well, it is what it is. Look, massive amounts. And also, people were going in and then asking for the operation. And the operation is $200,000, $250,000. And getting the operation, the recovery period is long, and they have to take large amounts of drugs after that, for whatever reason, but large amounts. And that's not the way it is. I mean, you can't do that. So I said, yeah, when it came time to making a decision on that, and because of the drugs, and also because of the cost of the operation, people were going in.
Some transgender people in the U.S. military have won serious gallantry awards.
Yeah.
What do you feel about?
Well, I'm proud of them. I think it's great. But you have to have a standard, and you have to stick by that standard. And we have a great military, and I want to keep it that way. And maybe they'd be phenomenal. I think they probably would be. But again, you have very strict rules and regulations on drugs and prescription drugs and all of these different things, and they blow it out of the water.
He just makes crap up. This is the commander-in-chief. When it's pointed out to him that we spend more money on Viagra for men in the military than it would cost to give somebody hormones, which is what massive amount of drugs. It's hormone therapy is what it is. I mean, what do you think it costs, Mr. President, to put a man back together again after he's been blown to smithereens? What do you think that costs? I mean, this man is so dense. We have had transgender people in the military. They serve with honor and distinction, same as anybody in the military. I mean, this guy is like, he's such a throwback. He's such an ignoramus. You know, the Queen gave a perfect gift to Donald Trump. She gave him an abridged version of Winston Churchill's book, The Second World War, because he's an idiot. So she gave him the abridged version. because she thought he was a moron. She gave a speech about World War II and about how the Western Alliance has kept us safe for 70 years. And he fell asleep because he didn't do Adderall. Talking about drugs. He didn't do Adderall. Somebody told him, you got to give a speech. Don't embarrass us on the world stage. Go without the Adderall. Read from this paper. And he literally fell asleep while the Queen was toasting him. He literally fell asleep. This man, I mean, and then at 2 o'clock in the morning, last night, 2 o'clock in the morning, he's tweeting like a 9th grade mean girl. Against Bette Midler, for God's sake. Bette Midler is top of mind for him. He called her a washed-up psycho. Are you freaking kidding me? She is a national treasure. Do not trash Bette Midler to me. That is a bridge too far. She retweeted an embarrassing quote from Trump that turned out to be made up, and she, hours later, said, I don't know how I missed this. This is not true. I apologize. And he decided to tweet at her that she's a washed up psycho and she's a scammer. Bette Midler is the scammer. Bette Midler. She does Broadway shows at 70. 70. She looks freaking fabulous. You're like the same age. Look at you and look at her. Look at you. Look at her. You have the face and the physique you deserve, and so does she. Unbelievable. 70 years old. She's doing Broadway shows. You know how hard that is? Do you have any idea? It's like a show a day, every single day, with costumes and costume changes and dancing and dialogue and 2 shows on Saturday. Really? Bette Midler at 2 o'clock in the morning in London, a day ahead of the commemorations of the 75th anniversary. I mean, this guy is a real estate scammer calling Bette Midler some sort of a scam. I mean, this guy would float phony rumors that the British royals were living in Trump properties, to the point where the British royals had to come out and correct him. Because the British royals don't need to launder money. Oh my God. I can't. When are we going to get rid of this man? Joe. Oh, I'm sorry. Joe in Oakland.
It's Joe in Oakland Park. Hi, Randy.
Oh, hi.
Listen, this is a little bit off topic now, but D-Day stood for Disembarkation Day.
Well, okay, so I'm just going to, I'm not going to argue with you because nobody knows. Nobody knows. That's the thing.
No, that's the official thing.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. No.
All right, I'm not going to argue with you either.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows.
I was in the Navy. My father was in the Navy, and that's what it meant.
No, my father was in the infantry in World War II, and he doesn't know what it meant. Nobody knows what it means. The historians don't know what it means.
Yes, they do. But anyway, that's what it meant.
It did.
And yeah.
No.
All right, hon. Whatever.
It's a day that will live in infamy. Obviously, everybody knows. And you know what? I shouldn't say that because I think we only have about 500,000 World War II vets that are still around, and in 10 years we're going to have like less than 20,000 of them. So this kind of allied intervention into a fascist system of brutality and extermination, it has to be seared into the memory of every young person in this country, because my dad's gone. A lot of people, their grandparents were the ones who were in World War II, and we're losing them. Yeah, so you know what? People need to know about all the things that happened that led up to this conquering of Europe by a fascist, a bunch of fascist dictators in Europe. And they also have to know what America and our allies did to beat it back, so that and to not forget it, because if you forget it, it will repeat itself. So whatever it is to you, it could be Disembarkation Day or Day or whatever it is, just remember what caused it so it will never happen again.
Well, I am like you. I'm a Jew, and I certainly know a lot about it. And I think we have a guy in the White House who's
sick.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
When I talk to Democrats in competitive districts, swing districts, those like yourself who flipped districts this last cycle, they often tell me, and when I say why aren't you there yet, they say that what they're hearing from constituents is they don't want us to focus on impeachment or the Russia investigation, the Mueller report. They want you to focus on the agenda, healthcare, the opioid crisis, you name it. For those members, what's your message to them?
Well, I'm not trying to persuade anybody else. I'm trying to do what I think is right. But I can tell you that folks in my district absolutely want me to focus on infrastructure, on health care, and on gun violence. And they don't see any contradiction between doing that and also standing up for the rule of law and checks and balances. I campaigned on both. And, the notion that we can just ignore everything that's happening, this freak show at the White House.
Freak show.
It's just not realistic. It's like saying that, I'm so focused on remodeling my kitchen that I'm not going to pay attention to my house catching fire. We do have a constitutional duty to do both. The House of Representatives has done a great job on health care and on infrastructure and gun violence. We can do this as well.
Thank you, Tim Malinowski from New Jersey. Yes, they can do both. In fact, they did do both. This is pretty amazing. Yesterday, the House passed the Dream and Promise Act, something, just so you know, in 2013, we had comprehensive immigration reform. Remember that? In the Senate. We had the Gang of Eight. You had bipartisan agreement on a comprehensive immigration reform package of changes to the law, how to deal with asylum seekers, money for border security, et cetera, and it died because at that time the House was in Republican hands and they didn't want to introduce it. Well, the opposite has happened. Here you have the House in Democratic hands. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats put forward the Dream and Promise Act, which is the DACA and the TPS, temporary protected status, people living in this country who are living under complete and utter fear of deportation with this, a freak show of a president. And so they were able yesterday to pass a piece of legislation that would give those people a path to citizenship. Not a citizenship card, just a path to citizenship if they don't break the law. You can't even have a ticket for jaywalking and stay in that class of dreamers that now have a path to citizenship, just so you know. So these are, America's best and brightest. These are the kids that came here through no fault of their own. These are the kids that did everything right. These are the kids that went to school, educated themselves, are now teaching in our schools, and the House literally passed this with 7 Republicans joining them.
The bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Woohoo! That was beautiful. That was absolutely beautiful. And now it will go to the Senate to die because the Grim Reaper, Mitch McConnell, will never, ever bring it up. But it passed 237 to 187. There were 7 Republicans that voted yes. All it does is create a new legal pathway for young, undocumented immigrants brought to the United States as children through no fault of their own. And it also protects the people with temporary protected status. Now, who are those people? Those are immigrants whose countries are ravaged by violence or natural disasters. And, of course, it will die in the Senate. Sad, right? Neil in L.A.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm very good. I've been a fan of yours for many, many years since Air America, and you're my North Star. So I was listening, and I listen religiously, and I heard that there was a dispute over what D-Day stands for.
Yeah.
And it's something that, quite honestly, I'm a result of. And my father was one of the people that planned D-Day.
Oh, really?
He was an American Army officer who came over to England, met my mother, and that's why I say I'm a result of that. But literally it stands for day. Because
that's what
my father was.
I had always heard that it just simply stands for day, and that
because they didn't want to give any clue as to what it really meant.
Right. And so then the day before today was known as D1. And that's why
D-1.
Yes, D-1, and that's why we celebrate or commemorate. We shouldn't say celebrate, but we commemorate the sacrifice today. And then the days after were D+1, D+2, D+3, like that. So that's what I'd always heard. Right, disembarkation I think is for cruise lines.
Right. Yes, exactly. There was a lot more going on than just disembarking.
Yes.
I mean, you had planes flying and bombing and so on.
Yeah.
But yeah, my dad was part of a group. My father was in Normandy 6 months prior to D-Day.
Wow.
Doing reconnaissance. And he was actually in the battle on Utah Beach.
Oh, my God.
He was, so I studied it all my life. He's buried in Arlington. The country honored him amazingly.
Who is your father, if you don't mind saying?
Well, he's one of the many, many people that history doesn't record. He was at the time he was a major, Julius Blatt. He was the youngest lieutenant colonel in the American Army at age 27.
Oh wow! Oh my God, 27. That is young for a colonel. My
well, but
God.
that's what was so amazing, and. He always used to refer to the fact that, he went to Columbia University when he was 16. So he was never a contemporary with his peers.
He was a brainiac. He was a big brain.
And that's why he ended up in the position he was in. And he was working for Eisenhower and all of them. I mean, in fact, there was, I don't know how widely known it is, but Operation Overlord was the general name for the operation.
Yes.
But somebody leaked information about the name and what its purpose was. And Eisenhower created a much smaller group of people that were called bigoted. They were bigots. They were B-I-G-O-T. And if you were a bigot, you were the highest level of security clearance. Now, the reason they used bigot was because in the North Africa landings, all the artillery and everything was marked to Gibraltar. So they reversed it, and they came up with bigot.
That's where my
if you look up bigot.
That's where my dad was. That's where my dad started.
North Africa?
Yes, he's got that 3-continent medal, my dad. There's a medal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he also has a Bronze Star for conspicuous gallantry. But yeah, your dad sounds amazing.
Well, after D-Day, he ended up joining up with Patton and went with the Third Army all the way to Berlin. He went behind enemy lines a second time.
Oh, this is going to be crazy. My dad was in the Third Army, so you know what? Wouldn't that be weird? If they
he was head of the combat engineers.
Oh my
God! The Third Army.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God! Wow, I would love to explore that and find out if they knew. I mean, I have a book of my dad's unit. I'm going to look for your dad in it.
Yeah, I mean, it was very. I mean, he stayed in England after the war. And with my mother, and I lived there. I had American citizenship, so I came here when I was 21.
Wow.
Well, yeah, and he eventually made brigadier general.
Wow.
But I mean, when I hear these stories, he used to love taking me to see, Battle of the Bulge, The Longest Day, all the different war movies, and he would educate me as to what was going on, and he loved them. And they must have been awful in terms of their rendition of what happened, but he loved them.
My dad too.
But when he saw the opening scenes of Saving Private Ryan, he got physically sick because he remembered it so clearly because it was so vivid. He couldn't watch it.
That's amazing.
But he lived to be 85. He lived a full life.
That's a beautiful film. Well, thank you,
anyway.
Neil. Thank you for sharing that. I am so excited to go home and see if I could find a connection between your dad and my dad, because that is amazing. My dad was in the Third Army.
And the other thing I should let you know, he was Jewish.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America. From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
We've told Mexico the tariffs go on, and I mean it too, and I'm very happy with it. And a lot of people, senators included, they have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to tariffs. They have absolutely no idea. When you have the money, when you have the product, when you have the thing that everybody wants, you're in a position to do very well with tariffs, and that's where we are. We're the piggy bank. The United States is the piggy bank. It has all the money that others want to take from us. But they're not taking it so easy anymore. It's a lot different.
What?
Our talks with China, a lot of interesting things are happening. We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
In the meantime, we're getting 25% on $250 billion, and I could go up another at least $300 billion, and I'll do that at the right time. But I think China wants to make a deal badly. I think Mexico wants to make a deal badly, and I'm going to Normandy.
Believe me.
Oh, my God. So here's where we are today. Today we are watching. It is 4:07 Eastern Standard Time. The show is live at that time and in this place. We are waiting until 5 o'clock. Why? Because at 5 o'clock, if the president is going to meet his own self-imposed, ridiculously doofusy, ill-conceived plan to increase tariffs on Mexico, it will have to come in an executive order by 5 o'clock, close of business today. So I'm, sitting here waiting to see, will he or won't he? Now, you all know that if there's something incredibly stupid that we're waiting to see if Trump will do, the question isn't really if, it's just when. And if it's not this one, this stupid idea, believe me, there's about 1 million more waiting in line to get daylight. The guy, in the chat room, they were talking about, Trump's been tweeting about how he wants to go to the moon again and then go on to Mars. And then he tweeted that the moon is so 50 years ago. And by the way, Mars is part of the moon. He's a genius, a stable freaking genius. Ain't he, everybody? Ain't he? And the whole world is waiting with bated breath to see what this lunatic idiot is going to do. And people from the Republican side are going, is he really this self-destructive? He's not self-destructive because the economy, is like the one bright spot because Obama fixed it. And, we talked last Friday on the Randi Rhodes After Hours podcast, the free After Hours podcast that's part of the Sexy Liberal radio podcast network. And so he was saying, and I was saying to him, me and Austin were talking about whether or not we thought he would do this. And neither of us thought he would do this, but everybody else thinks he will. It's just me and Mr. Goolsby that thinks he will not do this. But, the guy, and they're saying, is he really that self-destructive? Does he really want to destroy the one bright spot he has, the economy? He's not self-destructive. He's us destructive. He hates this country and he is out to destroy it. You know, I mean, he will survive. He always survives. He's in that way. He's the cockroach among us. Do you know what I mean? Put it this way: the bull doesn't give a rat's ass about the China shop. You get that? The bull doesn't care about the China shop, and we are there. So he'll decide on the tariffs today. And here we are holding our breath to see if the dumbest person in the world shares his decision with us before close of business today. You know, and if you have any questions, if you are on the other side of where I sit, okay, if you believe everything I say is wrong, okay, can I just show you or point you to his outfit in England as evidence of his decision-making skills? Can I just do that? Thank you. So this urgent message is going to be delivered by the morbidly obese runner. Now, just look at the pictures of him in that ill-conceived, ridiculous outfit that he chose, and then say to you, and look at his hair. I mean, what is it about? Everybody now ignores the fact that he's orange and that his hair is like a corn yellow, and that it's sprayed in place. Everybody ignore. I mean, just look at his decision making about his own damn self. Could you just look? You know, he's telling some exasperated hairdresser and some exasperated tailor, that he knows, the best way to do tailoring, right? That he's an expert on tailoring. He's an expert on hair doozies. I don't know. He's got a gut the size of a Stonehenge bluestone, and he's sitting there telling the tailor, no, I want it this way. The man is an idiot. And by the way, here's the jobs report for it. It's starting to take a toll. I just want to give you a little bit of math before I play you the CNN jobs report. Okay, here's how the math works on tariffs. So the middle class, middle income earners in this country, from the ridiculous tax cut, from the giant transfer of wealth, from the middle class to the top, they saw about $930 in a tax cut over the year. Okay, that's kind of what you got, $930 last year. According to the Brookings Tax Policy Center, the tariffs already in effect against China have cost each American household $831. You got $930, it costs you $831 to suffer through this man's, I'm going to effing tax them 25% MFs, which I can't play, okay? Because people get really upset when they, hear the words. But that's what he said. Obviously, we all remember that, right? So you subtract what the household that you live in has paid already for his craziness, for his ill-thought-out, stupid tariffs, okay, against China, which he says he wants to increase now. And you realize that it costs you, $831 for your household, and that your household got maybe $930. You got about $100 left of your massive, massive tax cut. But see, I didn't want to include the interest on the new debt he created by giving the very wealthy your money. Thought I'd take it easy on you. It is, after all, Friday. All right, so now that you know, here's the jobs report.
A really big stutter, I would say, in the jobs market here. Not a lot of appetite for big companies to hire. Only 75,000 net new jobs created in the month of May. And what's interesting and troubling is the two prior months, which were nice and strong, they were revised lower, so another 75,000 jobs lopped off of there. So a little bit of a weaker spring than we had been thinking of. Let me give you some context. Last year, on average, about 220,000 new jobs every month. This year, we're averaging about 169,000 new jobs. And in May, it was half of that. So something happened there to spook employers. The unemployment rate, though, stays steady at 3.6%. You had about 176,000 people who left the labor market. So these two different surveys, that's what they tell us. Among the sectors Business still strong, healthcare strong, construction only 4,000. That's a lot less than we've been seeing in the prior months. So a slowdown there in construction hiring is one of the reasons we're seeing this happen. Futures, though, are up a little bit. And why? Because the market is counting on the fact that if the president's trade wars dent growth, hurt hiring, hurt the U.S. economy, the Fed will be forced to come in and cut interest rates. So there's a little bit of a safety net under investors right now because they think the Fed won't let President Trump sink the U.S. economy.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. All right. So if you saw those numbers that we just showed you that CNN posted on their screen, then you can see that in February we only added 56,000 jobs. And then in May, we only added 75,000 jobs. So, another way to look at it is we've finally seen the last of Obama's job numbers because it looks like the United States has finally internalized the message that Donald Trump is the president and he's a buffoon. But thank you, Obama. Look how long the economy, held up under, this buffoon. Look how long it held up. It was a beauty. Now, Larry Kudlow once said that Trump's trade proposals will pose incalculable damage to the U.S. economy. Now he's in charge of it.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
I'm just saying, Mr. Trump, you got the wrong idea on protectionism. And I think on immigration. But from what I gather, you've made statements, and I heard a little bit of this in the debate. You slap a 25, 35% tariff on our leading trading partners like Mexico and China. We may not like them, sir, but tariffs and protectionism is not the answer. It will do incalculable damage to the American economy. Okay?
Okay.
We will cut off our nose to spite our face. And that is not the right policy.
There you have it. The chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors to Donald Trump back then, on his little radio show there, Larry Kudlow, saying you will cut your nose off to spite your face if you implement tariffs against our top trading partners. I know you don't like them, sir, but you will be cutting off your nose to spite your face. And now we're sitting here waiting for our rhinoplasty to begin with the scalpel in the hands of Dr. Trump. Holy crap, man. So his own team, remember Gary Cohn, who was the chief of the chairman of he quit because of these tariffs. He literally quit, and we are paying them because that's how tariffs work. When the items come in, as soon as they come and land on our soil, the importer of whatever it is has to pay the tax. And then they pass that cost on to the purchaser of that item. And so it's cost each and every household so far $831. We're not even talking about avocados yet or automobiles. And these automakers, okay, so here's what happens. So Mexico will import the first parts of the car, for instance, the harnesses that hold the wires. And that's the first thing they install in the car. You can't build the car without the harness, right, for the wires. And so then they'll export the harness. It will be put into the car, maybe here in the United States somewhere, okay? And then it gets exported for some other part. And then now the automakers are going to have to pay the tariffs multiple times. This is why the cost of an automobile would go up by $1,300. Again, Larry Kudlow, all through the year of 2015 when Trump was campaigning and saying, I'll tax them, MFs. I'm going to tax them 25%, you MFs, right? And it was cursing up and people were like, yeah, strong and wrong is what I'm all about, right? Kudlow was on his radio show saying, I think he's gone too far with this immigration thing. I don't think it's very smart. And why are we penalizing Mexico for stuff that's going on in the Northern Triangle? Mexico is Mexico. And then you have Central America below it. Even he understood this is like attacking Iraq because the Saudis, launched airplanes against us and flew them into the World Trade Center. It makes no sense.
He is not a conservative, or if he is, he's hiding it.
He's hiding it.
This anti-immigration thing has gone way too far. For example, all right, we'll take a break, but let me just get this in. For example,
get this in.
Donald Trump is blaming the government of Mexico several times for sending us these terrible people. First of all, the government of Mexico has nothing to do with sending us anybody. Now, you could talk about the drug cartels and other things. Most people come here for economic reasons, but yes, there are some terrible bad apples regarding the drug cartels. And what happened in San Francisco is a tragedy and a travesty. Okay, get that. But it's not the government of Mexico. Let's remember this before we get so protectionist. The United States and Mexico have very close relations. They're an important partner. They are our second biggest export market, right. Our third biggest trading market after Canada and Japan, and China rather, and literally millions of Americans go to Mexico for tourism and vacation, and millions of American retirees live in Mexico because it's cheaper and rather pleasant.
He's a jackass.
The president is a jackass, and he's doing this because he thinks that he can do this under his emergency powers. Okay, here's a little history lesson. Emergency powers have never, ever, not once, ever been used to give the president the authority to invoke tariffs. Now, if you are upset about the drug trade or cartels or the kind of commerce that comes over the border at the legal ports of entry, the president could sanction those individuals whose bank accounts clearly identify them as being beneficiaries of drug cartels. But he cannot attack the government of Mexico with tariffs and ask us to pay for them with emergency powers. It's never been done. If he does it today, it will be the first time ever. And the reason is very clear. It's the Constitution that he likes to poop all over, okay? That document, that piece of paper that he finds really inconvenient, that's what he's pooping on, okay? The Constitution, clearly in Article 1, gives the authority of tariffs and taxation to Congress. And there is no such thing as a president having emergency powers to assign tariffs to a government. It's never, ever, ever happened. This is what we're waiting to see. If he thinks that his emergency powers, by the way, what is an emergency and why do we have emergency powers for the president? Okay. So an emergency is a situation that requires a quick response. He's been campaigning on this since 2015. This is like 4 years now. Not an emergency. It doesn't require a quick response. Doesn't require a quick response. Therefore, he cannot use emergency powers for anything. It's unorthodox. It makes no sense. And here he is saying that he's going to put a tax on everything from auto parts to food. Auto parts to food with an executive order. Now, what you're talking about is a marketplace between us and Mexico where we export to Mexico almost $300 billion worth of goods. We import from Mexico about $370 billion worth of goods. That is an unusual place to seek to remedy an emergency by ruining the economy of both countries. It makes no sense. The law, the emergency powers that the president is claiming for himself to enhance his authority to bypass Congress do not exist, okay? Those powers do not exist. And destroying Mexico's economy and destroying our economy isn't a solution to a pressing current problem. Ted Cruz is livid, man, because the cost to Texas alone, $30 billion. And Ted Cruz, he's all strong now. Oh, yeah, you could trash his wife and he'll call you a sniveling coward and say, leave Heidi alone. But, otherwise, he's on board with every crazy, insane thing that you've done, including getting help and taking help from a foreign adversary's military intelligence units, right? But now he says there's no reason for Texas farmers and ranchers and manufacturers and small businesses to pay the price of massive new taxes. Yeah, he's growing something there.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
The Trump downside is protectionism. In the book, he wants a 20% on all imported goods. That will kill consumers and businesses.
Huh.
He has threatened a 35% tax on Ford vehicles made in Mexico and brought back to the U.S., and he's hinted at a 25% tariff on goods coming here from China. Protectionism, higher tariffs are higher taxes, and anti-growth.
There he is, Larry Kudlow, everybody, in 2015, and Trump is now declaring an emergency, something that needs immediate attention, something that's, requires him to use his emergency power to tax us, so that all that's left from the average family's big-ass tax cut is $100. $100, that's what you got. I mean, it's just so wrong. Everything about him is so wrong. And, he stands there, and he says, senators know nothing about tariffs. Well, it is the legislative branch that actually does trade and tariffs and will have to, vote to confirm his, his new NAFTA or whatever, UMSCA, whatever he's calling it, okay? And, I mean, who would trust him? His word means absolutely nothing. So this is just bizarre. And then he stands up there and he goes, oh, they know nothing about tariffs. I know about tariffs.
We're having a great talk with Mexico. We'll see what happens. But something pretty dramatic could happen. We've told Mexico the tariffs go on, and I mean it, too. And I'm very happy with it. And a lot of people, senators included, they have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to tariffs. They have absolutely no idea. When you have the money, when you have the product, when you have the thing that everybody wants, you're in a position to do very well with tariffs, and that's where we are.
I want an avocado. That's what I want. I mean, it's just it's crazy. The auto industry is freaking out. I mean, the GOP is speaking out against him.
What do you think of Republicans who say that they may take action to block you imposing those tariffs?
No, I don't think they will do that. I think if they do, it's foolish.
CNN's Phil Mattingly's on Capitol Hill. Phil, what are you hearing from Republicans after this meeting?
Yeah, one Republican senator who walked out of the meeting told me, Jake, it was a brushback pitch, a warning to the administration not to go through with the tariffs. Take a listen to how some other senators characterized it.
Yeah, I think it's a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying we don't have a crisis on the border. We do, clearly. I'm not saying it won't work, at least short term. My concern has to do with the long-term ramifications.
I think it's safe to say you've talked to all of our members. We're not fans of tariffs. We're still hoping that this can be avoided.
That's a key word there from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Jake. They hope this can be avoided. Essentially, that's the strategy right now. Hope and pray the president doesn't actually implement those tariffs. If he does, Republicans say they're willing to potentially vote to block them. But at least at this point, before they're actually implemented, right now, they're pretty much relying on just hope, Jake.
All right, so here's what the Senate could do. They could veto his tariffs. They could actually introduce a resolution of disapproval, is what it's called. Isn't that something? And then, of course, the president would veto their resolution of disapproval, and he would then need, the Senate would then need 67 votes, and the House as well. Need 3/4 of the House and 3/4 of the Senate to override his veto. And they would be forced to publicly rebuke their hero, their man. And I don't know that they would have 67 votes. I mean, the same thing happened with the Saudi transfer of weapons, right? They voted not to allow it, and then Trump vetoed it, and they don't have the 67 to override the veto. I mean, it's so sick. I mean, we have a president who wants to sell $7 billion in arms to Saudi Arabia. He wants to give it to the United Arab Emirates, and he was stopped by the Senate last year. They actually invoked a provision of the Arms Export Control Act of 1976, Trump vetoed it. So, I don't know what's next. The Insurrection Act of 1807 to use federal troops to enforce the border. I don't know. All I can tell you is he's an idiot, and we are suffering because he's a lunatic moron, okay? I mean, Elizabeth Warren, she had a really good town hall this week, and she's trying to explain to you that giant corporations have zero loyalty to the United States of America. They're multinationals. They go where the profit is. They, whatever it is that, you seek to do. Can we not look to corporations to solve the problem? Can we just say that's not the answer to anything?
But people in Fort Wayne, Indiana also understand that leaving it to a handful of giant multinational corporations to build our economy just isn't working. Those big corporations, they don't have any loyalty to America. They don't have any loyalty to American workers. They have loyalty to exactly one thing, and that is their own profits. And what we've got to do is we've got to have a government that doesn't say, hey, whatever it is that the giant multinational corporations want, let us help you. We got to have a government that says we need this economy, we need this country to work for working people, and that's what we're going to do.
Honestly, it makes no sense, It really makes no sense, because if he puts tariffs on, the automakers are simply going to pass the cost on to you, the auto buyer. The auto industry knows that. They absolutely are understand what's going to happen, because they're going to be taxed multiple times as these parts go back and forth.
President Trump says he has no plans to abandon his threat to impose tariffs on Mexico over immigration, even in the face of growing Republican opposition. Now, if those tariffs reach 25% by October, there could be a crippling cost to car buyers, sellers, and automakers. Erica Hill is live in Detroit, where they are watching this so closely, Erica.
John, there are some estimates that even that 5% tariff on auto parts could increase the cost of a new car by some $1,300. So that, of course, begs the question, what will it do to jobs? Well, like many these days, that question depends on who you ask.
A proud third-generation Chrysler employee, Chris Vitale works on the engines of the future.
I am the engineer's hands. I put things together.
For years, politicians have campaigned for the support of the country's nearly 1 million auto workers. Now their future is linked to immigration and the president's push for stronger borders.
I feel like he wouldn't have to resort to that if we had a Senate and a Congress that would enforce the borders.
Vitale, who voted for Obama twice, supports President Trump and his tactics.
People have endured much worse than expensive avocados or a few more dollars here and there, to protect the country. And I think that this is valid, what he's doing.
I think it's the wrong way to go about doing it. It makes us look awful in the eyes of the world. And quite honestly, I'm ashamed.
I'm ashamed. What does immigration have to do with the economy and the jobs? Well, if you do it Trump's way, yes, people will lose their jobs because of immigration. Isn't that something? Not because immigrants are taking your job, but because tariffs will price your goods out of the market and the company will fire you.
Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Look, there are so many reasons why this is a wrong-headed proposal. As Erica just pointed out, consumers are probably going to bear the brunt of this. If you look at past tariffs that this president has already imposed, 100% of the costs of those tariffs, which are taxes, by the way, have been passed along to Americans. So it's going to raise the prices for American consumers. It's going to screw up American supply chains, including in the automotive industry, which is already quite vulnerable right now, by the way. They've announced more layoffs in the auto industry in the first 4 months of this year in like a decade, or at least several years in any case. So the auto industry is already vulnerable. Lots of other manufacturing sectors also depend on basically unfettered trade across the Mexican border. And of course, there are other issues here, including that this is going to mess with our ability to credibly negotiate with China, right? We just signed a new NAFTA deal with Mexico and yet went back on our word and decided to impose new tariffs. And of course, also, if we manage to wreck the Mexican economy, it's going to increase the flow of immigration.
Right. So that makes no sense to anybody except to Donald Trump, who thought he looked good in that tuxedo. Okay? I'm just saying. I mean, he thinks his hair is normal. He thinks that, you know, he looks good. The whole situation is just untenable, and the economy is decelerating, okay? The number of jobs is getting very sketchy now. You know, you had 56,000 jobs created in February. They said, oh, okay, that's just one bad month. And then March and April, they looked okay, but they just downgraded those numbers. They took, those numbers down by 75,000. And then you have the May job creation numbers, and all that we've created is 75,000 new jobs in this economy. And, it's decelerating, obviously. And the people who are getting hurt, right, are the people who build things, manufacturing. That's where the job losses are coming from. That's where the sluggishness is. It's in the manufacturing sector. Okay. And so you have Democratic candidates that are out on the trail, understanding the economy, understanding about, manufacturing, and understanding that we've got a global crisis known as climate change that could be solved with a large investment into renewable fuels to get us away from fossil fuels, to make what the Saudis have, what the Iranians have, worthless. It accomplishes so many goals to invest in renewables that it's almost mind-blowing how it's staring everybody in the face, right? It's just right there. It's a plan that could be, launched, and it would benefit manufacturers, it would benefit the air, it would benefit the water. I mean, today Michael Bloomberg, he's a multi-billionaire. He just invested $500 million, $500 million in making fossil fuels history by investing in clean, renewable energy. That's a person who puts their money where their mouth is. I mean, that's just amazing. That's his personal fortune. And he has partnered with and by the way, Biden put out his climate change plan. Well, good for him. Except that there's a little issue with, did he copy and paste? Did he copy and paste other people's ideas? Listen, I mean, I'm waiting. The deadline to sign his executive order is like 9 minutes away from what I can tell. And, I don't see anything happening right this minute. I guess we'll know after the break. But after the break, see, I wanted to put this in the second hour so that the unfriendlies would not be here. Because, Friday we post the whole show for free. And, we just do it so people can learn about the world in which they live in. And so I don't like putting these kinds of intra-family arguments in the front of the show on a Friday, because I don't need the trolls. You know what I mean? Weighing in on our family arguments. And this is a family argument that we have to have in the Democratic Party. Looks like Joe Biden had a very bad week. Okay, first he skipped the California convention. He didn't show up. That was one. Then he put out his energy plan, his clean energy plan, his Green New Deal plan. And it turned out that he lifted it. Okay, he copied and pasted from some organizations that focus on climate change and how to abate it and how to invest in America and how to invest in American jobs. And Elizabeth Warren was very clear about her ideas for a Green New Deal. It's a $23 trillion market that we can actually provide the products for, that we can actually invest research and development money into, and require anybody who takes our research and development and uses it, deploys it, that they produce the items, the objects, whether it's solar panels or wind turbines or whatever, route we go, algae, okay, to make energy, that they produce those jobs here, all right? And then all of a sudden, there was this report about Biden put out his green energy plan.
Biden embraced parts of the Green New Deal, which has become a litmus test for many of these 2020 Democratic candidates. He called the Green New Deal a crucial framework for combating climate change and said that he aimed to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. But then they did run into a little bit of trouble when it came to the actual plan that was released itself, when it was revealed that some passages in that plan bore similar language to proposals that had been put forth by progressive organizations, either on their websites or in letters. And the Biden campaign said that as soon as they realized that some of these citations were missing, that they worked to quickly amend that in their plan. But of course, to put a little context on this, as you mentioned, Biden's first presidential campaign back in the 1988 race was derailed by charges of plagiarism, both on the campaign trail and also during his time in law school.
Is this a problem for you? I just want to know. I mean, the idea that he embraces a Green New Deal, the idea that he understands that it's a $23 trillion market for products, for, renewables, for turbines, which use all kinds of parts, bearings and, cogs and, everything. The idea that he knows that he's embracing that he's for it is good. The idea that he doesn't give credit to the people who are literally devising policy plans and legislation and, ways to deploy and protect our research and development dollars, where the money should come from. Elizabeth Warren's very clear about a wealth tax. It's just an amazing number when you think about it. If you actually employed or deployed a wealth tax against the 75,000 of the richest families in the United States. It's a tiny little thing. 75,000 of the richest families in the United States. I forget what the threshold is. It's either 10 billion or 50 billion. Okay, and you deployed a wealth tax. It would raise $2 trillion over 10 years. And that's the entire investment for the Green New Deal. Okay, so Biden puts out his plan and he leaves out the citations. He doesn't give credit to the brainiacs who thought up a way to pay for the investment. So that was one thing. Now, over the weekend, there's this big thing in Iowa. He's skipping that too. He's not going to show up in Iowa. And also, there was this contretemps over something called the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment is an old amendment from the 70s that says, it was right after Roe v. Wade, that says that if you get Medicaid or Medicare, that you can't use that, which is really your money that you paid in for, retirement, or God forbid, you go belly up and you need health insurance, right? And you're below the poverty line. But they passed this Hyde Amendment, said no federal funds can go to pay for abortion, right? And Joe Biden has been for the Hyde Amendment since the Hyde Amendment. I mean, the guy's been on, he's been political, Biden's been around for, oh God, this is hard to say. He started his political career 50 years ago. 50 years ago, south of the Mason-Dixon line, right? But he's willing to say now circumstances have changed and now he's for the Hyde Amendment. But it's really interesting because this week he was asked a question by a woman who said she was a volunteer for the ACLU in an open format. And she asked him if he was still for the Hyde Amendment. And he said, no, it can't stay. Then his campaign put out a clarification saying he misunderstood the question. He thought she was asking about the Mexico City policy, and no, he's still for the Hyde Amendment because he's a very religious Roman Catholic. And he doesn't think that the federal government should pay for abortion. And then yesterday, the campaign said, oh no, he's for getting rid of the Hyde Amendment. Now, he's been in politics for half a century, which is longer than some of the political rivals of his have been on the planet.